Assistant Minister for Finance, Zed Seselja, who joins us to discuss the politics of the day. And you won the election, but clearly it might not be as easy as you think in terms of getting the signature policy through the parliament, that being the $160 billion worth of tax cuts.
Well, Kieran, we never think government or getting legislation through is easy. That's no doubt about that. I've been in this place for 6 years, and governing is always challenging, but it's important that we get these signature policies through. And I think there's a very strong argument that we had these on the table right through the election. They were debated, they were critiqued, and the people of Australia gave us their support to continue in government. And let's face it, one of the big defining differences between the parties at the election was our attitude to tax. It was whether or not we supported lowering taxes and supporting aspiration, as the coalition put forward, or the Labor Party, who put forward an agenda which was for much higher taxes and higher spending. And so the people have made their choice, and I guess this is a very early test for Anthony Albanese. He has said some fine-sounding words about aspiration, about listening to the results, about, not properly defining who the top end of town were during the election campaign. Well, here's an opportunity with the vote. We've got tax cuts on the table. They were taken to the people. They were in the budget, and now the Labor Party has the opportunity to vote for those so that we can get at some pretty significant structural taxation reform through the parliament.
Senator, the reality is you might have to deal with the crossbench. Will you horse trade if you need to?
Well, Laura, we'll only have to deal with the crossbench if the alternative party of government says that they are going to ignore the result of the election and they are going to block tax cuts. So, let's wait and see. I don't make predictions. I'm not into the game of making predictions about, how the Senate will vote on particular things. Anyone who does that is a mug. But let's face it, we can certainly make an argument. And the argument I would be making, and I'd be making it directly to Anthony Albanese, and Jim Chalmers has come out and said he wants to be, in a party, and if they were in government in the future, about lower taxes and not as high a spending agenda. Well, here's an opportunity. If they come into the parliament and they vote against these, if they vote against these tax cuts, they will be making a lie of all that they've said since the election, where they wanted to reflect. They wanted to support aspiration. During the election campaign, when Bill Shorten was up seeing the miners up in Queensland, and he said he'd look at what he could do for them. Of course, he was going to do nothing for them. Well, Anthony Albanese can support good policy, and that's by lowering taxes.
It'd be responsible, though, for the government, if there is no deal done, to just get that first wave of tax cuts through, given the later tax cuts don't come in till the next term of government anyway. In terms of the economic stimulus that's needed, the RBA is saying the economy needs a bit in terms of infrastructure spending, but obviously the tax cuts would help a lot as well.
And we need both. We need both. I mean, this is why this is a...
The point is, would you compromise in the end, if you had to get that through, at least in the short term?
Well, Kieran, Matthias Cormann has said very clearly, we're not going to split this package. It is an important package, and each element...
Even if it hurts the economy?
Well, each element of the package is very important, so let me take you through it. I mean, having immediate...
But essentially you're holding the economy to ransom as a political weapon over Labor.
No, that's absolutely not right. What we're delivering is absolute immediate tax relief, which is very important, but also we need structural reform as well. And this is not... The two are not unrelated, because once you're offering immediate tax relief and you're offering ongoing tax relief down the track, that changes behaviour. That builds confidence. As people look to the future and they say, when I work that little bit extra, or I get those extra shifts, or if I, get a pay rise, I'm not going to have to pay more and more in tax. That's the structural reform we want to make.
What are you proposing,
and that's a really important one.
So I
don't think the two are at odds at all. Sorry, Laura.
What are you proposing in terms of structural reform beyond the full suite of income tax cuts? Because it didn't seem to be much you were talking about during the election campaign.
Well, look, I don't accept that, Laura. And, we had a very clear agenda that we laid out in the budget that we took to an election. And this is a very important structural reform. Don't underestimate this. And this is why the Labor Party, I guess, are tearing themselves in knots over this, where you've got a situation where we want to say to people, whether you're earning, if you're earning, $45,000, $50,000 at the moment, that right up the income bracket, right up to $200,000, by the time we implement this reform, that you'd only be paying, you'd be paying no more than a top rate of 30 cents in the dollar.
What are you offering in terms of structural reform for business in industrial relations? Is there anything, or are you just talking about tax cuts?
Well, no, there's a range of measures we've put forward, and if you look at what we're delivering when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to look at industrial relations reform. I mean, you talk about people dismiss the work that we've already done in bringing law and order to our building sites. I mean, construction is such a critical part of our economy. We talk about an infrastructure agenda. It's very hard to deliver that infrastructure agenda if you have the standover tactics of the CFMEU. We've very much had a strong agenda on that, and of course Christian Porter will be taking that forward to make sure that when you build things in Australia, you can deliver them on time and on budget. We've got a big infrastructure program that will assist with those. We've got an agenda in terms of skills when it comes to getting more young people into work.
But in terms of IR, you mentioned you've had a strong position on that. That's true, you've had one. But what's new in that?
Well,
the building watchdog's done. It's happening.
The building watchdog has. Let's be clear. When we got that through, we didn't get everything we wanted through in terms of those changes. But I'll let Christian Porter talk about what the forward agenda is going forward there. But absolutely, we need to continue that. And so whether it's in skills, whether it's in infrastructure. I mean, let's look at infrastructure. The Western Sydney Airport, for instance, that is a huge piece of economic infrastructure for our nation, opening up millions of Australians who live in Western Sydney having access not just to the job opportunities that go with that, but the importance of a second major airport for our largest city. These are really important reforms that we've done and will continue to do. But on the table at the moment, we have tax reform. We have tax cuts, and there is a very clear question for the opposition. Will they learn from the result? Will they honour what they've said since the election, that they want to be for aspiration? Well, here's an early test. What
about building a new coal-fired power station, something the Nationals are pushing for, and it seems that that the crossbench wants this as well. And another suggestion is your big stick legislation that you continuing on with, trying to push through the parliament again this term, be expanded to be company-wide. Is that something that you could get on board with?
Well, look, that's not on the agenda, as I understand it. I'll leave to Angus Taylor to talk in his portfolio. But when it comes to providing more energy, not just have we got Snowy 2.0, but we have said that we will support the delivery of more dispatchable, reliable baseload energy, and we are technology agnostic on that. We want to see a situation where we have enough power in the system, where we lower prices, where we make sure we keep the lights on, all while delivering on our international agreements. So, I'll leave that to Angus Taylor to talk about the fine detail, but he's put a lot on the table, and the government's put a lot on the table in terms of putting more energy into the system. Do
you look forward to the day when this is post-politics, that issue? Because certainly talking to people in that industry, they can't wait till there's a bipartisan position on this, because it's been so diabolical for their own investment. Certainty, you spoke about uncertainty before in terms of individual taxpayers. Retailers, energy retailers, who are copping the flack at the moment for power prices, have had no certainty when it comes to energy policy. Well,
look, we think that getting the policies right is of course important, and not just providing certainty for business. It's about small and medium enterprise, and it's about individuals and families who have been paying too much in electricity, and we've been doing all we can to get that down. We think that in some cases big energy companies haven't behaved as they should have, and we're happy to take them on where needed. But the policies should support a strong economy, and they should support lower prices and reliable power.
And on the infrastructure, can you give us a sense of what sort of areas could be expedited to deal with this soft economy?
Well, if you look at what's on the table, we have said that the money will flow as quickly as the projects can get off the ground. So in most cases, we don't control the rollout of those infrastructure projects. That is at a state and territory level. The money, we've allocated it, we're ready to spend it. We certainly look forward to working with state and territory governments. If they're able to get the approvals done more quickly, then we'll work with them to get that money out, and that can be in the economy, supporting those jobs and supporting that critical infrastructure.
You're also the Minister in charge of electoral matters, Zed Seselja, so plenty on your plate for this Parliament. Before the election, we seem to see a bipartisan view that perhaps the pre-poll, the length of pre-polling need to be looked at. There seemed to be a view that 3 weeks was too long. Will you be looking into that? Will you be reviewing that?
Well, what happens is, in the ordinary course, is we see the JSCEM committee look into the election, and it gets terms of reference. So in the previous parliament, that was one of the recommendations, was that the pre-poll be shortened. That's something that I'm personally very sympathetic to. I think that 3 weeks is too long. I think the feedback we got from people was that it is too long, and maybe 2 weeks or around that time would be better. But there's a really good story out of the election. You know, we saw a record number of well, we're very pleased with that. But from an electoral matters point of view, 16.4 million Australians are on the electoral roll, which is a record. It's around 97% of the eligible population, and around 92% of that voted, which is up from the 2016 election. And that is contrary to a lot of expectations. People thought with an expanded electoral roll, we saw a lot of young people coming onto the roll with the plebiscite, that there may not be the same turnout, but we've seen turnout go up. A record number of Australians involved in getting involved in the process. So that's a really good thing. But yes, it's a great thing that we won the election. So thank you.
Just a quick one before you go. I have to ask you about the Prime Minister's commitment. It's in the Daily Telegraph to fix the system that's seen so many of our veterans commit suicide. Is a Royal Commission needed?
Well, look, let's not get ahead of ourselves. There is certainly an ongoing issue that the PM and the government is responding to with mental health of our veterans. There's no doubt about it. And we are striving to get it right and to do it better. And we could point to a lot of investment that we've made over the last few years. But have we done enough yet? No. We need to continue to do more. And so the Prime Minister has said very clearly he's seeking further urgent briefings. He's pointed to some of the great work that has been done and the great strides we've made in trying to understand it and to support our veterans. But we need to do more. So, you know, let's wait and see. But the PM, Veterans Affairs Minister, are very much committed to it.
Minister, we appreciate your time as always. Thanks so much.
Thanks very much.
Back in just a moment.